So, sketch the graph of y equals 3x squared plus 6x minus 1, then give the vertex the equation for the axis of symmetry. State the parabola. The parabola has a max or a minimum value, and give the y value for that max or minimum point. So, in order to graph it, in order to sketch the graph, you actually need to find the vertex first. I mean, if you really want to make a table of values and try to go for that, that's fine. A lot more work than what you need to do. You need to find the vertex. To find the x-coordinate of the vertex, you have to use this. You cannot use completing the square to rewrite it in vertex form because you have a 3 in front of the x squared up here. So using completing the square isn't going to work on this one. So the x-coordinate of your vertex is minus b, which is 6, over 2 times a, which is 3. So you get negative 1 for the x-coordinate of your vertex. For the y-coordinate, you take negative 1, which you got for the x-coordinate, plug it into the equation to find out what y is. 3 times negative 1 squared plus 6 times negative 1 minus 1, which is 3 minus 6 minus 1, which is negative 4. And that's how you find the vertex. Then everything else comes from the vertex. The axis of symmetry. X equals the x-coordinate of your vertex. So x equals negative 1. For a max or min, I need to know does it open up or down. Positive x squared, so it opens up. And if I want to go ahead and graph that now, negative 1, negative 4. It's right here. It looks something like that. So that means I have a minimum value, and my value for my max or min is negative 4 because it's the y-coordinate of my vertex. If I have a parabola, the vertex is the maximum point or the minimum point, depending upon whether it opens up or opens down. For number 2, identify the vertex and the axis of symmetry. X-coordinate of my vertex is what's inside, and it's the opposite. So it's negative 5, and then the same as the outside. This is the y-coordinate, so it's outside, the plus or minus outside. That's where the h and k come from in vertex form. And my axis of symmetry, x equals the x-coordinate of my vertex. Number 3, put the equation into vertex form. Now, I don't specify how to do it. Do I? If I don't specify, I don't care. So there's more than one way to put this into vertex form. So I can either do the x equals minus b over 2 times a, negative 2. So that's my x-coordinate. Take the x-coordinate, plug it in to find my y-coordinate. Y equals negative 2 squared plus 4 times negative 2 minus 2, that's 4. Minus 8 is negative 4 minus 2 equals negative 6. So my answer would be y equals x, and it's the opposite of the x-coordinate of my vertex. So it would be x plus 2 squared, and then minus 6. Or, conversely, I can use completing the square on this one. It's okay to use completing the square because I don't specify. To do completing the square to find the equation in vertex form. And the only reason I would do that is because I have one x squared up in the front. I rewrite the problem, x squared plus 4x blank minus 2 blank, and I fill those blanks in. Take half of this, half of b squared, I get 4. I add 4, I subtract 4. This is my perfect square. And then I have minus 2 and minus 4 gives me minus 6. And looky, looky. I get the same answer either way. And I don't care which one you use. Okay, either one, I don't care. If I don't specify, whatever floats your boat. Okay, completely factor, do not solve. Read the instructions carefully. Ladies, gentlemen, knock it off. Okay. So, set up the Xbox. 3 times 6 is negative 18. Negative 7. Two numbers multiply to give me negative 18. Add to give me negative 7. Negative 9. Positive 2. Divide those both by 3. The negative 9 reduces to negative 3. So my factors are 3n plus 2 and n minus 3. And it is my answer because it says to factor. It does not say solve. There is no equal sign. So there is no solving. Anyways, can't solve if there's no equal to. Okay. Number 5, use factoring to solve. Ooh, I must solve this one, and I must use factoring. If you do something other than factoring, you will get a 0 for this. I would go ahead and set it up if you're comfortable. Do this. 30 and 11, two numbers multiply given 30 that add to 11, 5 and 6. That means I have C plus 5, C plus 6 equals 0, C plus 5 equals 0, C plus 6 equals 0, C equals negative 5, C equals negative 6. And if I don't see factors, and if I don't see factoring, you get zeros. And having the Xbox is not enough. And I have students that, well, I did the Xbox thing, so I figured out my factor, so I just gave you the answer. Oh, well, you didn't actually show me the word for factoring, and it says to do it by factoring, you get a 0. I don't see this. I don't see this line here, the first one here. You're going to get a 0. Okay, I'm just saying. Be warned. And try to argue later. I got it on tape. Exactly what the instructions are. Okay, number 6, use factoring to solve. You must show all your work. Same thing. You must use factoring to solve. Negative 60, 11, 60 and 11, 4 and 15. Negative 4, positive 15. Divide them both by 3. This reduces to 5. So I get 3h minus 4h plus 5 equals 0. 3h minus 4 equals 0. H plus 5 equals 0. H equals 4/3. H equals negative 5. Okay, number 7, it says use any method to solve 4x squared minus 20, which means you can use any method you want. What I would do, because I have x squared, is I would use square roots. So I have negative 4x squared equals negative 20. Divide both sides by negative 4 to get the x squared by itself. X squared equals 5. Square root both sides. X equals plus or minus the square root of 5. If you do not have the plus or minus, it will be incorrect. Whenever you use a square root to solve, you must include both possibilities, the plus and the minus. Questions? Okay, completing the square. Complete the square to solve it. You must show all your work. Once again, you must use completing the square. I had a number of students in my 7th period class that on the worksheet that you were supposed to use completing the square to solve. They did half of them by factoring, and the other half they did by the quadratic formula. None of them by completing the square, so they got zeros on that worksheet. Okay, that will happen on the test too. So completing the square. A squared minus 6a blank equals 12 blank. First thing, add 12 to both sides, rewrite it with a blank. Next step, fill in the blank. Take half of whatever b is. In this case, half of negative 6 is 3. Negative 3 squared, I get 9. I add 9 to both sides. Rewrite this as a perfect square. A minus 3 squared is equal to 21. Square root both sides. A minus 3 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 21. Add 3 to both sides. A equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 21. And this one's actually really, really easy. Okay. What number completes the square? What number did, how did I fill in the blank on the previous problem? Fill in the blank here. Take half of this and square it. Negative 5 squared is 25, so I add 25. That's all that is. How do I fill in the blank? 25. Use the quadratic formula to solve. You must show all your work. Got the quadratic formula here. X equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Once again, notice, just like when we did this last week, I did not simplify anything. I just plugged the numbers into the formula. First mistake students make is trying to do crap in their head before they even write it down. Write it down first, and then start solving it, and don't do too much at once. X equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 9. 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 4 is 32, and I have 2 negatives, so that's plus 32 all over negative 4. X equals 3 plus or minus the square root of 41 over negative 4, and that's it. I can't simplify the radical. 41 is prime. There's nothing I can pull out. Nothing I can do about that. So I'm finished. Okay, if there's a negative, pull the negative front, make it an I. If you can simplify the radical, simplify the radical. If after that you can reduce, you reduce. If you can't, you can't. Number 11, simplify the following expression. 4 plus or minus, is that an 80? Yeah. 4 plus or minus square root of 80 over 4. So I need to simplify the square root. Okay, I can't divide it. Remember step 1, simplify the radical. So 80 is 16 times 5. So the square root of 80 is square root of 16 times square root of 5. So I have 4 plus or minus 4 root 5 over 4. And once again, if I can divide everything all the whole numbers, nothing inside the radical. All three terms are divisible by the same number. In this case, they're all divisible by 4. That gives me 1 plus or minus root 5. And I have my 1 in my denominator, but anything over 1 is just that. Okay, evaluate the discriminant and determine the type and the number of solutions. So the discriminant is the portion underneath the square root of the quadratic formula. So it's b squared minus 4 times a times c. 13 squared is 169 minus 4 times 8 times 9. $288. Combine those together, I get negative 119. This is less than 0. So that means I have 2 imaginary answers. If it's 0, I have 1 real. If it's positive, I have 2 real. If it's negative, I have 2 imaginary. It means I have a square root I have the square root of negative 119 as part of the quadratic formula. 2 imaginary answers. Okay. Complex numbers. Simplify them out. Okay, let's see. 750 divided by 25 is 30. And 30 is... 4 doesn't go into 30. Nope. Okay. So I end up with the square root of negative 1, square root of 25, square root of 30. Square root of negative 1 is what? Your test is tomorrow. What's the square root of negative 1? I. Gee, there's one person who's going to get this right tomorrow, I guess. I. Square root of 25 is 5, so I have 5i root 30. Number 14, I to the 18th power. I can reduce that. Take 18, divide it by 4. What's my remainder? It's 2. So I to the 18th is the same thing as I squared. And I squared is what? Negative 1. Yeah, I'd memorize these. Your test is tomorrow. You better know it. Number 15, you FOIL it out. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times negative 2i is negative 6i. I times 4 is 4i. I times negative 2i is negative 2i squared. I squared is negative 1, so this becomes a plus 2. 12 plus 2 is 14. Negative 6i plus 4i is negative 2i. And you just FOIL it out like you would anything else. Okay. Questions? And I'd study this one based on your quiz scores. So the performance task. I do not do these in order. I do not do this one in order. I do A first, and I do B, and then I kind of go from there. But I do A first because you plot the points. The vertex is negative 3, 1, negative 3, 1. There's my vertex. And then I have 2 other points. That's either going to be my maximum or minimum depending upon the other 2 points. The point negative 5, 5, negative 5, 5, and negative 2, 2. Okay, there's part 1. And I plot the points. And this is the most important information I have. My vertex is the most important information now. Does this graph open up or down? Does it open up or down? It opens up. Come on, people, really. This is an easy one. Plot the 3 points. The vertex is either at the very top or the bottom. It goes through the vertex. The other 2 points are above it, so the vertex has to be the lowest. It opens up. The other 2 points are below the vertex. It would open down. Okay. What is the y-intercept? We'll get back to that one. True or false? Point negative 1, 1. We'll get back to that one. State the equation for the axis of symmetry. That's easy. X equals, and oh, look, I gave you half of the equation. All you got to do is come up with a numeric part, which is the x-coordinate of your vertex. F, state the vertex form of this parabola. Y equals x minus the x for my vertex squared plus the x-coordinate, or sorry, plus the y-coordinate of my vertex. Go ahead and change the x plus x minus negative 3 to x plus 3. There's my vertex form. Now to get my standard form, I take my vertex form, FOIL out the x plus 3 squared, which is not x squared plus 3 squared. X plus 3 squared means that I have x plus 3 times x plus 3. It's not x squared plus 3 squared. You cannot distribute squaring across addition. This will give you x squared plus 6x plus 9. But I also have over here the plus 1. So I need to add 1 to that. So you get y equals x squared plus 6x plus 10. What's my y-intercept? That's easy when I get it in standard form. It's whatever the constant is at the end. Or conversely, you can put in 0 for x in your vertex form. 0 plus 3 is 3. 3 squared plus 1 gives me 10. True or false? Is the point negative 1, 1 located on this parabola? Plug in negative 1 for x. See if you get 1 for y. Probably not. Because if this is the vertex, which means I only have 1 point where y equals 1 that's there, it's going to be no. I mean, I can kind of tell from the graph for sure. But if I want to do it algebraically, plug in negative 1 here. Negative 1 plus 3 is 2. 2 squared is 4. 4 plus 1 is 5. So this would be a false. Not no. False. It doesn't ask yes or no. It says true or false. You have 2 choices, true or false. One of those 2 points. One of those answers, true or false. Questions?